Hello everyone, my name is Neville Dubash and I'm part of the Accenture Labs team. Today I'll be hosting a Tech4Good workshop on designing for the next billion. I have with me a set of social leaders, Prabhat Love, who's the CEO of Grameen Foundation in India, Dr. Sangeeta Madhu, who's an Eisenhower Fellow, Alex, who's the CEO of Maya Health, Sridhar Venkat, who's the CEO of Akshay Patra Foundation, Ashok Kamath, who's again the CEO of Akshara Foundation. Prabhat, I just wanted to get your thoughts on what do you think would be the impact of design and technology for a specific focus area that you and your organization are focused on?
Thanks, Neville. So, Grameen Foundation works on taking digital finance to the last mile amongst the hundreds of millions of people who are left out of formal financial services. And we find that India is a country of great diversity, and yet we hear about the terms like India and Bharat, which kind of coexist at the same time within the same boundaries. So our endeavor is to really build solutions about that Bharat to make sure that people who are not able to access financial services, digital payment services, things like health insurance, pension, etc., how they can be brought into the fold of mainstream financial services. And we find that there are three important barriers in that adoption, where this kind of design thinking can really kind of play an important role. One is, of course, the most basic thing, which is about education and awareness. At the same time, education and awareness is not enough by itself for people to start using various services. Then comes, after being aware about a certain service, how much do you trust about that product, about that institution? And finally, the question of how accessible the services are or products are, and how affordable it is. So in using this kind of design thinking really helps us address each of these questions. And the way I kind of mentioned about these barriers, which is about access, about education and awareness barrier, about trust barrier, and about access and affordability barrier. A combination of design thinking, using technology and using things like human-centered design principles, client-centric offering, and how do you kind of engage and sustain the interests of the potential clients. All of these kind of play an important role. Yeah. So that's how we at Grameen Foundation are trying to look at it. Speaking very broadly, of course. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, I think that's a great insight from a financial literacy, financial inclusion perspective from a Grameen Foundation. Yeah, great. Sangeeta, what are your thoughts about design for specific impact area that you kind of look into?
So I'm just going to take off from what Prabhat mentioned about financial literacy. We want to promote emotional literacy in the community. In one line, if you could say, how do you democratize mental health?
Okay.
So just a few kilometers from here, I passed out of the National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences. As a clinical psychologist, my constant question is this: how do we provide mental health services to a population of 1 billion? Just to give you an example, V was 14 years old when she sought our help as a clinical psychologist. I was trying to help her for like 5 years. She was treated for nearly 5 to 6 years. And by 23, she's had depression for nearly 10 years now. We know for a fact that 50% of mental health problems start before the age of 14. 75% of the problems start before the age of 25. 2012 statistics. We know by 2030, mental health is going to be a global epidemic. Depression is going to be the biggest cause of death. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for 15 to 25-year-olds, a Lancet study. We have enough evidence to say that mental health is a growing problem.
Okay.
So on my fellowship, these are the two questions that I wanted to ask. How do we provide an environment for children so they become healthy and happy adults? How do we promote mental health in the community? Through teachers, through parents. How can technology help us?
Wonderful. That's a great insight on the statistics and the background that you've shared with us as technologists to kind of understand the problems and the challenges and the opportunities that exist in the area of mental health. right? So Alex, I know you also work in the area of Maya and health as well, right? So what is your perspective on the role of technology and the impact it can have on health?
So just taking up from what you said was that mental health is becoming a major problem in our country, and for a country like India itself, providing all the infrastructure to address that issue is going to be a huge task. So for us, the question is, how do you get people to look at becoming proactive about their health? Okay, so from that sense, more focus on preventive health. And one of the reasons why people are not proactive about their health is also because they lack the knowledge and information. And also the question of accessibility and affordability, which Prabhat had also raised a question. And for us, we have designed an approach in which we look at how you can deliver last mile services. And from that aspect, technology can play a very important part, mostly from a design part of it, because there's been a tremendous development in health development, in devices and things like that. But how do you bring this sort of services to a person there in the remote area or in a village itself?
Correct.
Instead of that person coming to a central place, which does not happen actually. So how do you bring this sort of health services, which also empowers that person to become proactive about its health?
Correct.
And I'm saying design plays an important role, and if you can design ways in which this can be done using technology also, it'll change the face of the country.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's a nice perspective. Sridhar, specifically on your areas that you are working with from an Akshay Patra Foundation perspective, what do you see as an way in which technology could have a greater impact on your area of work?
So, well, thank you, Neville, for hosting all of us. We at Akshay Patra, our vision is no child in India will be deprived of education because of hunger. We started very small in Bangalore with 1,500 children. Today we feed about 1.75 million children every day in about 15,000 schools, which is about 1.5% of schools in the country. So in a span of 6 hours, 1.75 million children are fed across 15,000 schools, right? And if you look at the center of the whole design, it is compassion. So it's a very human-centric activity which we do. So the challenge which Akshay Patra has is not growth. So there are about 100 million children who go to the government schooling system in our country. These are children who come from lower socioeconomic strata, but they are looking for an opportunity to learn. So we provide them access to good food, and by that becomes an incentive for them to come to school.
Correct.
So how technology can help? So we are a public-private partnership. Okay, I will give you one example how Accenture helped us. 2 years back, we had a project with Accenture called the Million Meals Project. Right? So we worked on creating a smart kitchen in Akshay Patra. So let me give you some maths. Last year we did about 330 million meals. So if we say 1 paisa per meal, 1 paisa, it is food for 3,000 children for one whole year. So with the Accenture project, we saved, we could save money for about million meals.
Million meals.
So that's the power of technology.
Correct.
Second is, so we are a public-private partnership, right? So we are able to give an unlimited meal to these children at a cost of 11 rupees, out of which 5.5 rupees comes from the government, and 5.5 is what we raise. So the challenge is not growth for us. The challenge is how do we sustainably grow this model. Okay? So there's a need for maybe 100 Akshay Patras in our country. So if this 5.5 rupees what we raise can be brought down or can be made, if we can plateau it, then we have a great model to scale it up as much as we want.
Correct.
Our next goal is 5 million children every day.
Okay.
So we are looking at ways of using technology, using social innovation in optimizing this cost. That's number one. And how do we ensure hygiene day after day? Because children, though they come from low socioeconomic strata, they're very discerning. They want to have good meal every day. So how do we ensure good tasty meal, mass produced, which is as close to what the mother will make?
Correct.
Okay, that's the challenge which we have. So I think all put together, whatever solutions our friends are giving may help Akshay Patra,
Correct.
right?
And I think it's a great vision of feeding like 5 million people, you said, right?
5 million children every day, yes.
Every day. That's a great vision, and we really hope that you are able to achieve
Thank you.
that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we also need to see how we can take things to like the way Akshay Patra has taken it to scale. Okay.
Yeah. So Ashok, in terms of Akshara Foundation, right? I know you're focused in the area of education, right? What do you think is the impact of design and technology in the area of education and specifically for Akshara Foundation?
Yeah, so we are in education, but more specifically, we are in teaching math to children, right?
Okay.
And even more specifically, teaching math to 1st to 5th graders.
Okay.
Because we believe that a sound foundation will lead them to, do well. So the fundamental principle: prepare, not repair.
Okay.
Right? So you get them prepared well. You don't have to repair in the future.
Yeah.
Like everyone has said here, the problem in this country is enormous, right? We have 1.3 billion people.
Yeah.
The problem, incidentally, is growing faster than all the solutions we are putting together. What it simply means is that 20 million kids are being added to the school-going population every year, and all of our collective solutions are not addressing more than 15 million. So the problem is 5 million ahead of us, right? And unless we do something really drastic, we are not going to be able to, control this, in any meaningful way. So scale and sustainability become the two driving tenets of any solution, right? And scale need not come from just one of us. I could invent something and share it with 10 other people, and they do it in different geographies, and this whole thing will have a collective impact that's much bigger than what Akshara itself could do, right?
Correct.
Second, if you want to address scale, you necessarily have to work with government. They are the ones who provide you the scale. I mean, like it or not, 65% of our children go to government schools. And if you can address that 65%, you pretty much lick the problem, right? So, and it has to be sustainable, which means that what you do has to live beyond you, right? Because an Akshara can't be everywhere forever. And I think that's a problem that Sridhar is also, trying to tackle. We can't be everywhere forever.
Yeah.
So all of our thinking and design has to be rooted in that. Is A, how do we design for scale and sustainability? B, whatever you teach cannot be done, the business as usual method, because children need to understand what they learn, not memorize, and dispense when asked, right? So they have to really understand those concepts. So the tools that we give them have to reflect that. And third, at Akshara scale right now, we are working with about 1 million children. And we get so much data from assessments, from monitoring, from what we call Gram Panchayat contests. There's a ton of data that comes across. So we are grappling, an interesting technology problem that probably, is great for your teams here,
Okay.
which is with so much data, how can you go from just reporting facts as to what happened versus can you get into prescriptive and predictive modes,
Yeah.
right? So what are the technology elements that you can bring in to do that so that we can always stay ahead of the problem,
Correct.
So that's really our perspective.
Yeah, and Ashok, you brought out a very interesting point on scale, right? So Prabhat, I know we worked with you for a couple of applications like Ramin Guru and things like that. Do you have any specific thoughts on how can you, kind of scale these solutions, given the societal nature, right? I mean, and
Yeah, that's a good question, Neville. And people who have been in the development sector long enough, understand about this question. That okay, you can have very innovative methods and techniques, very effective at small scale. But how do you take it to big scale? For example, Akshay Patra has done 2 million kids and vision to go to 5. So in our work, what we find is that the beauty of design has to be its simplicity. the more complex you kind of make, the less scalable
doubt,
it becomes.
yes.
No doubts about it.
Because you're talking about solving the problems for a population which has low level of awareness and education and literacy, doesn't have exposure to all the different high-end technologies. So at your front end, you got to make it as simple as possible so that it has that wider application.
Correct.
So in our case, for example, we built this mobile learning application called GLEAP, Grameen Learning Platform, and also the apps that we fortunately were able to develop with help from Accenture Labs, the Grameen Guru and Ease applications. So using these kind of applications, we have been able to train a field force of over 300 frontline workers. We call them Grameen Mitra, and these Grameen Mitras in turn have provided digital financial literacy to over 300,000 people in last 1 year.
Okay.
So that's how we kind of looking at scale. The other thing is also you have to combine insights from various domains. It's not just about technology, not just about design. Things like how do you integrate insights from behavioral science and behavioral economics. And in the financial education, research shows that in order to make it effective, you have to keep it simple. Less is more. So focus on some key messages, not everything that you could potentially teach them.
Correct.
The messaging has to align to their needs, their specific problem. If your messaging is aligned to that, then you'll be able to catch their attention. Otherwise, they'll just lose interest.
Correct.
So engaging and sustaining the interest of learners in whatever environment, in our case, we are talking about financial education and digital financial literacy, is the key.
Okay.
And if you have been able to do that successfully, then there is impact in the form of retention of the new information, and there is scalability.
Correct.
But just to add to what he was saying, I think you need to make it simple in some sense. You see, even when we started this program on health, we were trying to deal with too many things. We wanted to have health impact. We wanted to have a person from the community to go and deliver health services and all. So that became a much more complicated, because basic things, even if for them to track information of somebody's health status, they were writing it manually, and then we started using an application. But there was too much information for them to collect. Now, can that become very simple, in which they don't have to collect too much of information, where the application itself supports it, and for them to focus more on the end customer itself, so that where they build a trust factor, the interaction is more on that, and this becomes just a simple way in which they collect the basic information that's required, which can provide that information back to the customer itself for them to become more proactive with health. So I think that's the first thing. How can you design your technology in which it becomes simple for the people to collect information? Like even for them to write the name of the person, of their customer, is a difficult process, because they come from this background where they, like when schooling has, though they've been to school, but the learning has not taken place to that level. So can we make it simple, which empowers them also to be motivated to stay on into this whole system itself?
Correct.
To add to one point what Prabhat mentioned, you see, India, as Ashok was also talking about, we need to solve problem with scale, right? So one is simplicity. Second thing, learning, which I had last 13, 14 years of being in Akshay Patra, focus is also key to scaling up. So you stay focused on your core area and collaborate with people who know other things better than you.
Correct. Great.
I think that will really help, and that way we can go faster than
Absolutely.
the problem. You'll be able to lead the solution actually.
Correct.
So let me just add to it, right? We are talking about technology, and in rural India, you will not find fancy phones with 8 GB RAM and all that, right? So you have to design things that work on the entry-level things.
Yeah.
Smartphone penetration today, I reckon, is about 25-26% in rural communities, and it's growing. There's no doubt it's growing rapidly. So to reinforce what a child learns in the classroom, we put the entire curriculum as a set of 210 games that works offline. The key word is offline, on the family smartphone. So in the evening, if the child gets an additional 15-20 minutes to play,
Correct.
There are multiple rounds of practice and a round of challenge for the child to understand all the concepts. And this is mapped to the national curriculum framework and all that stuff. But the key is that it works offline, it works on a cheap phone, it's free, and it's available in the language of the state. So we've got it currently out in 5 languages.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
So that pretty much has 65% of the national footprint. And over the next year or so, we will probably add and get an 85% national footprint.
Correct.
But these 5 elements should be thought of when you bring out something by way of technology to address rural communities.
Correct. I think this was very similar to what we had experienced with the Grameen Guru application.
I'm
as
sure
well,
you did,
right?
yeah.
That
Yeah.
it's available on the edge.
Yeah.
It's available in the local language, which is convenient for people to kind of interact. Right.
Yeah,
So-
we talk about things like client centricity, client-centric approaches, and things like if you want to gain the trust of the community, you have to first start speaking in their language, and it applies to technology as well. Technology better speak to them in the language that they
That
understand.
they are comfortable with.
Yeah, you're much more likely to kind of start that engagement process and that trust much faster if you pay attention to these simple basic rules.
We have a different challenge. So house is a psychological domain which is very jargon specific, and we have very few psychologists and huge level of problems, right? So, and all the qualified people are living abroad, so we have very few left here. So we have a huge demand versus very little supply. So this is our focus. How do we build a community which will be aware of mental health issues? The biggest problem we face is a lack of awareness, because there's so much of mumbo jumbo outside that very little awareness among parents and teachers. So we tried working with psychologists in schools, and this is huge stigma. It's not like food, When a psychologist enters, there's already raised eyebrows. So we had to, break that stigma, get in, and then we realized it's the teachers. We have to work with the teachers, and we have to do away with actually psychologists, because we go there, we do our job, and it's not sustainable. So the teacher is the one who's going to work with the children all the time. So how can technology simplify these huge jargons which we're talking about? Give this information to parents and teachers so they become more aware. Build a community which will promote positive mental health for the sake of children, because children are the messages we send into the future.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So how technology also empowers, for us in the health space, is this community health work. Okay, so how does it empower her to deliver those services, and it should also help in their own learning process itself.
Okay.
And one of the major challenges, how do you make it sustainable if you want to scale? So we have seen that people do pay for services if it's of high quality, and it solves some of their pain points. So a simple pain point is like they do not go for a test because even though it may be free in the government hospital, they waste about 4 hours just to get a simple test by that. So how can you deliver that service to a person in a rural area where they can continue to go to work and not lose a half day or a day work?
Yeah.
So that's what. Then how it can become also in terms of empowering the communities to start learning itself, because they've always been made to feel that they cannot learn and all that thing. So, but information helps them to learn and to empower themselves to take control of their health.
Correct. Yeah. So I think
Absolutely.
these were absolutely great insights into some of the big social problems, like how Sangeeta, you talked about mental health and things like that, and the kind of innovations that we can bring in the area of whether it's education or school education for children, or mental health, or financial inclusion and things like that. So I think these were really great insights, and thank you very much for joining us and sharing your perspective.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Nestor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.